Welcome to the Melanoma Research Foundation Mucosal Melanoma Awareness Month. This month, we are all about bringing awareness and attention to a disease that impacts roughly 2% of all melanomas that are diagnosed each year. What we do know about this rare disease is that it is very underrepresented in the melanoma community and lags far behind in treatment options compared to cutaneous melanoma. In December of 22, we convened a meeting at Columbia University to bring together a group of international experts as well as mucosal melanoma advocates and caregivers to talk about some of the research that's on the horizon. We wanted to show you a clip from that meeting where two melanoma advocates talk about their experience and their journey with this disease.
Hi, I'm JB Ward, and I am a 7-year vaginal mucosal melanoma survivor. I currently live in Nashville, Tennessee with my husband and my son, who you can see in one of those photos there from when I was first diagnosed, but he's now 8 years old. So when I was first asked to share a little bit with you about my early patient experience, the first month or so after my diagnosis, I really worked hard to try to come up with a very cohesive and clear story for you, or way to help you understand what that whole time was like. But I really struggled and really was trying to come up with maybe an analogy. And the closest one that I came to was a pinball machine, and that came a close second. But I think really in the end, I kind of decided that the reason I couldn't really come up with a good way to describe it all in a cohesive way is because it was not cohesive at all. My life, my health, and everything was just sort of in chaos, is how I can describe it. One way to kind of describe what I was going through, I remember one time sitting in an imaging clinic, and I was about to do a CT scan, and they had handed me the contrast drink, and I was trying to work up the courage to drink it because they're kind of gross. And I remember it was almost comedic. I had it almost to my lips and I got a phone call. So I reached in and I answered it. I was like grateful for the reason to not drink it a little bit longer. And it was my oncologist, and he said, wait, stop, we're going to actually do a PET scan. And I was like, okay. So I set it down, and it was a bit of a whirlwind there for a moment. But I could see in those early weeks as my providers were trying to figure out what was going on. I could hear it in their voices, in their actions. I could see it in their faces that they really didn't have answers for me. And I just, how can you make such important decisions with such high stakes when, every factor, every factor that you're given to try to make this decision is ended with, but we don't really know. So those early weeks were very challenging. Really, it was the first couple of months. Some numbers, it took me 3 months from the time I first noticed a symptom to get the diagnosis. I was bounced around between various people saying that it was various things. Nobody really suspected that it was any type of cancer. So it took a long time. After that, it took, they did scramble and do a pretty good job with coming up with a plan. But then after that plan failed, it was, a little bit confusing as far as what to do next. So I'd say in that first bit of time, the best way to describe it is more of chaos. In the beginning, I was pretty reserved, and I felt pretty isolated. I didn't share a whole lot with my friends and family because I didn't really feel like I had a whole lot to tell them. Because there were so many questions, I really was trying to sort of protect them from that uncertainty. And really, how can you write home about an ever-changing landscape? It's not clear to you, so how can it be clear to share? It was about 6 months after my diagnosis that one of my friends had sort of done some legwork for me and had done some research online about communities, which there weren't many to find. But she did find a Facebook page. It was a private Facebook page for caregivers and patients with mucosal. And so I did join, and I remember being a little excited because I was the 100th person to join, and nobody threw me a party, but I thought that was pretty neat, at least memorable. And it was really from that point when I started to connect with others and started to find that community that I really had just been needing that home base to kind of start to share my own story. So actually, it was a month later that I started a blog to start talking to my own family and friends about what was going on. And I started working with the MRF on a project. We were working on a video, and really kind of took off from there. So once I finally found that group of connection is when my walls started to come down. And actually, as I was confirming these dates and doing some background, I found a post that I had made, and it was actually my second post in the Facebook group. And I want to share it with you because I think it's pretty relevant. On July 16th, 2016. I just have to say, it's so helpful to hear what other people have done and are trying. I'm sharing some of this with my oncologist when he calls me back. What strikes me is that they don't have much to guide them, other than calling a couple of colleagues to see what they're doing, because they don't have a network of people treating mucosal melanoma. I wish the docs had their own Facebook page to share their ideas and frustrations, laughing emoji, thumbs up emoji. I was jesting a bit about that, but I did feel at the time that need for that networking, that community, and the coming together. And I could feel through my providers that there was a lack of that guidance and a lack of that networking. And I really feel that that's what we're doing here today. And it's really wonderful that everyone's coming together. And I would have loved to hear back then that this would be happening. So I'm just grateful to be here and grateful that this is finally happening. Thank you.
So my name is Cristian Jonsson. My wife is a mucosal patient. She's from Singapore. I'm from Sweden. She's 53 years old. We live in Singapore. She's unfortunately sleeping. So in May 2021, we did a health screening together at Raffles Hospital, which included a colonoscopy. And in Annie, we detected a hemorrhoid in the anal canal, which was excised, and it was darkish colored. So we sent that for biopsy. And the biopsy result came back as invasive malignant melanoma. We obviously did full MRI and full body PET scans, and there was no metastasis. So the first meeting, the doctors explained to us what malignant melanoma was in very basic terms. Basically, what we were told, it's very rare, very dangerous, and they described APR as the solution. And then subsequently after that, they went to their tumor board, who recommended something completely different, which was basically a revision of margins and sentinel lymph node biopsy, and depending on the results, further management. What we did is Annie had very early stage breast cancer, so we called her breast cancer surgeon, who recommended an oncologist, and that oncologist recommended a colorectal surgeon. So we sat down with them, and they were very open that it's a rare case, very limited data. They don't have all the answers, exactly like JB just described. But Dr. John Chia recommended a Caris Life Sciences test and a Signatera residual disease test. And I wanted a second opinion from a pathologist from a different hospital, which was Singapore General Hospital. So we sent them the slides, slightly different results, but still mucosal melanoma. What we then did is, I basically spent a whole week, 24/7, going through a lot of research on the internet, and I looked at each research publication. I tried to find the doctors that had written it. So I contacted Royal Marsden and 2 specialists in this field, but was not able to get a consultation with them because of insurance rules, and we couldn't travel during COVID. So we managed to speak to a nurse who had spoken to one of the specialists, and informally they told us to not take any dramatic steps right away, do not do APR. Found another Singaporean doctor on the internet who had worked at Royal Marsden and who was at the National Cancer Center in Singapore. And we contacted him, a new consultation, walked through the diagnosis and the 2 histo reports. They then took it to the tumor board, who recommended wide local excision, followed by adjuvant. Then I obviously, there's a lot of research from Peking University Cancer Hospital. I found one doctor there who recommended mouse resection before the adjuvant. And then obviously he gave me what he thought what we should be doing essentially. I then found another pathologist on internet from the same hospital who recommended another person, a professor specializing in mucosal melanoma. So they were kind enough to have a Zoom call with me and my wife. And in that Zoom call, we suggested not to do APR, not to do WLE. And they said, that's fine, go straight to adjuvant. And they informed us of obviously the clinical trials they're doing, but not sure which regimen will do better than the other. I contacted also Dr. Richard, who obviously is here today via email. This was in July 21, described the situation. He shared his knowledge, described the field and where the research currently stands. We met another oncologist in Singapore for another opinion. Emailed, I think, 15 plus doctors who either never replied or said they couldn't help. Then contacted Dana Farber, and Sloan Kettering and Karolinska. And it's very difficult to get through to the specialists unless you provide massive amounts of information or a requirement to travel there physically. And very few have the ability to do teleconsultations. So what do we decide to do? Well, the facts for us were no metastasis, caught relatively early. The invasive component was only 1 millimeter in depth. In situ, we believe we had clear margins, but weren't 100%. The histo reports are slightly different, but both are basically saying it's a mucosal origin. We've done numerous PET scans and pelvic MRIs. They're all clear. The Signatera test we've done twice. There's no DNA tumor in the blood. The Caris report we received, obviously, for an amateur like us, amateurs like us, very difficult to understand it, but you know, there was some BRAF, KIT, SF3BI, and the PDLI L1 couldn't be accurately interpreted. So it's clear, obviously, it's a data limited area. Different doctors have different views. Many doctors are risk averse right away. Tumor boards have different views and they don't communicate with each other. And obviously, if you spend a lot of time on the internet and read all the publications, they don't make for pretty reading. And as JB just highlighted, it's impossible to speak to other patients in this specific area of cancer unless you get lucky. And then for amateurs like Annie and myself, understanding kind of wider tumor biology is literally impossible. And our personal instinct was that this hemorrhoid had been there for some time. So I guess this tumor had been growing for quite some time, quite slowly. We then decided not to do APR, not to do a wide local excision. We decided no radiotherapy, no elective nodal dissection, and no sentinel lymph node dissection. So we started chemo and immuno right away. It was cisplatin, temozolomide, and pembro. We started that in June 21. We completed in June 22. We set up a proctoscopy program as well with our colorectal surgeon, which happens every 2 months, and we have PET scans, MRIs every 6 months. Annie handled chemo and immuno extremely well with limited side effects, so that's a good thing. 3 times we have detected small pinkish brownish spots in the anal canal where the original hemorrhoid melanoma was found, and we removed those with clear margins each time, November 21, June 22, and November last month. Okay, now these biopsies, twice they've been in situ, not invasive. if you speak to the pathologist, they're borderline being in situ, but because the original histo report and situation was that it was mucosal, he labels them as in situ, and the third, the middle one was not. So we've had 3 surgeries to remove them. They're usually 1 millimeter or 2 millimeter in size, 2 by 2 or 1 by 1. And Annie obviously recovers. She recovers very fast and extremely well. Her wounds heal rapidly. So she's in the morning, she's out in the afternoon. But obviously there's a limit to how many times we can do these excisions. We're gonna wait now for 2 months. And then we're debating whether we should try imiquimod, which I think not many people have tried that in the anal canal, but that's something we're discussing with our oncologist. Now, the last slide that I have is concluding thoughts. I think this conference is perfect. I think the melanoma community needs to do more conferences like this to kind of encourage sharing of information more systematically and on a global basis. I think that the second point I would like to make, or we would like to make, is fear in patients or caregivers combined with doctors who don't know which doctors in a country or in a state in the US or in a community that has expertise in this specific field is not a great combination, particularly when you have the stress that a patient and a caregiver goes through. I think the third point I would like to make is doctors need to be more easily available to have a 20, 30, 40-minute Zoom call and be willing to correspond. We're very lucky in that we spent quite a few days, weeks, nights on internet and emailing, cold emails, random emails to people, and we found some who were generous with their time and knowledge. So, who has data, who has information? It's clear for anyone, even amateurs, when you go on the internet or when you read research, the barriers to research must go down. The amount of compliance and regs is phenomenal. I work in a bank, so I know what regulation means, but there are too many barriers that basically expend time and increase costs. And that comes to the detriments of patients. So with that, those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching our video. We hope you will get more involved with the melanoma community. You can visit melanoma.org to find out many ways that you too can be a part of bringing us all together and finding a cure for mucosal melanoma. You can make a tax-deductible gift or join a Miles for Melanoma 5K team or serve as an advocate reviewer. There are so many ways that you can make a difference. Please join us.